Hi, today is, let's see, episode number 39, and we have guest Allison, do we say Brager or Brager?
Brager.
Brager. Completely different. Okay, so Allison Brager. So here is her bio as I see it. So she's a neuroscientist, so you can call her Doc. She's a commander in the United States Army, so you can call her Ma'am. She is an author. And we may or may not talk about her book, Head Unraveling the Athletic Brain. So you can call her nerd twice, right?
Oh, for sure.
Academic, at least. She actually gets paid to train and compete with the Army's Warrior Fitness team, and is a CrossFit athlete who's made it to the games before. So you can call her Stud. She's still pole vaulting at the ripe old age of what, 35?
37.
37. Sorry, 37. I would never add years, so it's always better to go under.
That's fine. I'm flattered. Thank you.
Perfect. And I'll let Allison give more of an introduction of herself in a couple minutes. But first, I wanted to talk about why we're talking to Allison and what we're doing here today. So we have our Talent War Group podcast, and our goal is to talk to professionals. It's a lot of our focus is with regards to talent management, recruiting, a lot of retention. You get those really high speed, talented individuals in, you need them, but you just can't keep their interest. You can't keep them working and focused. So a lot of our audience is either in the HR space or in that managerial space, or even some of these talented individuals who have gotten really frustrated previously. So anyone who's online and listening, whether you're listening live or you're listening to this after it's recorded, feel free to type questions, whether you're on LinkedIn or Facebook or any other media you might be listening to this podcast in, and we will try to get back to you with answers. We'll try to answer them if you're live, or we'll try to answer them afterwards in comment section, or it might even turn into a future podcast. So that's the audience. You see or hear Allison's very, very long resume. And so that's who we're throwing questions at. The theme for the month of June with regards to the Talent War Group is really discussing resiliency. So I'm gonna hand a softball to you, not even throw it at you, Allison, and start with the title of this podcast is Failing at Your Own Pace. And that was based on a text message you sent to me. Do you have a story behind that?
Yeah, absolutely. That was the motto, one of two mottos of my graduate school mentor, who I am really grateful to have had, because he taught me how to have a thick skin, which obviously being in uniform you have to have, but more so just being a scientist. Like most people are willing to be critical and supportive of the things you do. But really fail at your own pace is in regards to your level of self-discipline. So how willing you're going to invest in advancing yourself personally and professionally. Because honestly, in science, you fail a lot more than you succeed. When I was in graduate school, so I'm trained to do brain surgery in 3 different species. So mice, rats, and primates. I used to do drug delivery to different targeted brain areas, and it worked 10% of the time. And then depending what like whatever endocrine factor or whatever neurochemical you were trying to measure after you delivered the drug, your success rate was between 5 and 8%. So even less than 10%. And so that's really what fill at your own pace means.
And how do you apply that? So what I'm looking at is I'm looking at a diagram, kind of a Venn diagram. Somewhere in the middle is Allison, and you've got that athlete, that academic, the literary. I mean, it's one thing. I'm an engineer, and I'm in the process of trying to write a book, and it is so hard to make something that somebody else might be interested in reading when you're very math sciencey. So how do you apply that, and how do you apply that whole failing at your own pace when you really are living in so many different bubbles simultaneously?
Well, another thing he said, it's funny, I didn't mean to like talk about my grad school advisor, but he really was like words of wisdom. And it's really how I've lived my life. And I honestly think, Lisa, this is how you live your life too, is planning your career around your lifestyle and not your lifestyle around your career. Honestly, that's why work, like for as much as I do and as much as you do, it doesn't really feel like work at the end of the day, because I care about athletics, I care about teamwork, I care about family, whether it's immediate family or, you know, my Army family, science family. And I like, you know, pushing the envelope forward and being at the tip of the spear. And that's how it all comes together. And I will like empathize with you in terms of writing a book, because in all, it took me about 2 years. So I had that idea after I went to the CrossFit Games the first time, mostly because I was like, if I don't do this now, I might be a nobody someday, because I might never go back to the CrossFit Games, and I have my 15 minutes of fame in CrossFit. So let's do it. And then in all, it took me about 2 years. So I understand. We're not all Malcolm Gladwells, and we're not all, you know, James.
I wish. Interesting, very interesting. But this wasn't your first book, was it?
No, I mean, I write textbook chapters and things like that. Yeah, when I was 20, I decided I wanted to write like a young adult fictional book that actually is kind of sort of like my coming out story. But yeah, I made it as like an ebook early on, like back when self-publishing became a thing, way before Amazon. But yeah, I don't know. I was always that kid like who best express my thoughts through writing. Obviously, over time, I've had to learn that some letters need to be written and not sent, like the good old Leadership 101 that Abraham Lincoln used to say. I don't know if you know that. Lincoln said he would write letters and then crumble them up and throw them away.
Yes.
I've gotten better about that.
Yes. Email makes it hard. It makes it hard to not accidentally press send.
Yes.
So we actually did a survey before this show, and decided, or kind of asked people, hey, what would you like to hear about with regards to resiliency? And I think some of the questions are interesting because you're coming at it from so many different viewpoints. But out of the topics, the top one was how to deal with difficult people. And again, we're talking about failure, we're talking about resiliency, and dealing with difficult people, especially those who are doubters. What are your thoughts? How do you deal with them?
So one of the tactics I've used, and you know, this applies to all areas in life. Like I've seen this not just in the military, I've seen this throughout my science career. I've seen this with students, right? Like I have a ton of difficult students over the years, and same with athletes. But the thing is even with difficult people, you have to understand their mindset and like one, you know, have that, we call it tactical empathy, right? Like you have to have these hard conversations with them to really figure out why they're so difficult without actually asking them why they're so difficult.
What's your problem?
Yeah, exactly. And then I think besides that, I think everyone in life, obviously, it's easy in uniform. Like people join the Army for a reason, whatever that reason is find out what they're passionate about. And then like, if you have any tasker or anything in the working environment that you think aligns with that passion, like put them in charge of that. And chances are they'll take ownership and head that way. That's what I've had to do in the past with difficult people.
Oh, sorry.
Oh no, and then I was going to say the other thing too is like, at the end of the day, there's always karma. Like as one of my former coworkers at Walter Reed used to say, like, this too shall pass. So I always tell myself that is this too shall pass.
Yeah. You talk about finding something that your difficult party might be interested in, using that as either a way to direct their work or connect with them. And on a previous podcast, one of the stories I told was I had an employee who just could not find a way to even talk to our boss. So, he was working for me and my supervisor just thought he was useless and he couldn't figure it out. And I said, what do you know about her? He says, I know nothing. I said, well, why don't you find something out? And he was really stuck on that. And I said, well, walk by her computer, see what's on her screensaver. People put screensavers on there because they want you to ask about them or they want to see their kids. And this lady had a charger as her screensaver, not her 3 kids, not her husband, not her brand new house, not her dogs. She had her car. And he's like, I know tons about cars. I said, go talk to her at the water cooler about cars. Yeah. And, once you can break through that small bit of lack of communication, once you can crack that shell, the hard candy shell, and get into the gooey center, everything seems to flow out from there. Yeah. So I think that's great that you said, find what they're personally either good at or interested at. And it is easy in the military because everybody joins at some point in time. But in corporate America, and you've worked outside of the military prior to putting on uniform, do you find that you need different tools to crack the egg or crack the shell?
Yeah, see, I think outside the military, it's more difficult, right? Because I think, in the military, we have esprit de corps and one team, one fight and like camaraderie. The ivory tower was a challenge. That's honestly why I left it, is everyone's stuck in their little silos and a lot of people, like their intents are always selfishly driven. And not to say like, you can't be selfish. Like some people just know that about themselves and their personality. Like if you have a hard conversation with yourself and you realize you're a selfish person and not a selfless person, then maybe a field like academia is great for you. But really, I think in some regards to that, it's about placating to their ego. So like you make decisions based on that, Yeah.
And it's a little bit snoozing. It's a little bit of being interested in other people. And sometimes it is trying to progress your own self-interest. But more often than that, if you're working on a team, your self-interests are the team interests. There's never a negative, no matter what your individual motivation is, there's never a negative to getting the team to work better together or to communicate better together. We actually had our first online question, Allison. So I want to go to this guy who looks like he's building quite a resume as well. MBA, I don't know, NCCO, doctoral candidate. Jared Carson. Yeah, he asked, ma'am, do you feel that all of your accomplishments, areas of improvement, and struggles have helped you develop a more resilient attitude and drive for your success?
Oh, absolutely. And I didn't know if I was supposed to respond to them in the chat or not, but
the chat's just for us.
Oh, okay, got it. Okay, so the more you climb up the totem pole, like, and the more successful you become, like, the more challenges you're going to be faced with, because the more responsibility you're going to have, right? Like JFK said, with great with great power comes great responsibility. Like and you have to be more resilient. And I think the people, the higher you go, there's that selection process, and those who are resilient will pass go, and those who aren't don't.
Well, and I think something about in the military, it's easy. There's concepts like you only complain upwards. You can only bitch to your boss. You can never complain downward. That's easy when you're wearing you're wearing a 4 rank and the guy next to you is wearing a 5 rank, you can complain to him, but the other guy next to you is wearing a 3 rank, you can't complain to him. It's kind of, there's lines drawn in the sand. And if he works for you, you definitely don't complain to that guy. But in corporate America, it's so much different because you have people who work for you, but it's not a set pyramid. It's not straight lines. Your subject matter expert technically reports to you, but he's really working on his own. I'm sure it's very similar in academia, short of him being your immediate supervisor. Even your peers that are senior to you are kind of your peers. They're kind of not. And so it becomes very interesting as you elevate in the ranks how you have to deal with problems. So you really do need to build that resiliency early, because you can't just vent your bad day to anybody around you, and you can't carry it to work as a professional. When you have a job, you can do what you want. When you have a career, totally different story.
Yeah. And I mean, I think part of it is vetting out, like, you know, you want to be equal opportunity, but at the same time, vetting out who's resilient early on. I mean, I have had some amazing mentors and leaders in my life, but I'm just telling you, my grad school advisor is just like, he was just full of some of the best words of wisdom. And another thing he used to say is he only ever recruited athletes and artists to his lab. He's like, you didn't have to be a collegiate athlete like me, but at some point, if you grew up playing sports or in the arts, whether it's like music, actual, you know, being an artist, a writer, musician, like, he wanted you in his lab because, again, you're going to fail more than you succeed. And over time, you practice your craft so much in a way that the rest of the world really doesn't care, right? Unless you're an Olympian. But like, the chances of you being an Olympian are 0.0001%. And so that's another tactic, is like trying to identify people based on like even life history experiences who could be resilient early on. And yeah, I'm biased too in that, like, if you are an athlete or you're an artist, like, I mean, I will tell you, in the past, when I was at Walter Reed, I did work with a lot of civilians. Like, even though I was in uniform, 98% of our workforce at Walter Reed is civilian for a reason. And I had to choose between like 3 different people who were phenomenal on paper. And then I, you know, tried to get to know them about their, you know, what they did before science. And it turns out, like, and she's one of our best civilian scientists in the Sleep Research Center at Walter Reed. She was a professional ballerina in a previous life and went to Juilliard and like performed, you know, in the Nutcracker in New York City. And I was in, like, it goes to show, because that resiliency she had being a professional ballerina has 100% carried over to her job as a scientist.
So you said like 3 different things that I want to peel the onion on. And your area of focus is sleep studies, or describe it better to me.
Yeah, so we basically sleep deprive people to their extreme limits to try to find out if they are resilient or sensitive to sleep deprivation.
And how do you do that?
We keep them awake from anywhere to 40 to 88 hours straight. It used to be allowed to go out to 96 hours, but now it's 88 hours. And they do a ton of cognitive tasks. And over time, you start to realize, usually about 40 hours in, who is not resilient to sleep deprivation and who is. I mean, everyone drops off, but there's more stability in the people who are resilient. And then also we give them tests of like, that are meant to emotionally frustrate them too. Ooh. Oh no, what happened? But yeah, so we'll give them tests that are meant to emotionally frustrate them too. And that's an easy way to figure it out, because just having conversations with these people early on, you kind of have no idea who's going to be resilient and who's not. But by hour 40, it is very clear who is resilient and who is sensitive, not just in how they perform on these tests, but really how they treat our staff. Hands down, 100%. So I do know that there is another question that came in. Techniques that I use to de-escalate a situation or conversation. That's a great one. I'm sure it works very differently in the civilian world. In the military, I think it's a little bit easier because of rank. But I will say from my times in the past, in academia is, and I've had this happen before where like two scientists have gotten in an argument over a concept or a hypothesis or a theory. And usually there's some other colleague that is, closer with one of the colleagues than the other who intervenes. And so I think in that situation, you really have to, that's why it's so important to get to know your people at work, is because in a situation like that, you can always rely on your colleague in science or your battle buddy to get you out of that situation. And then obviously it's important to have those hard conversations afterwards. I think that's the beauty of being on a sports team is most of the time you're going to get along, but somebody, one day after practice, especially when hormones are jacked up because you just, worked your ass off training, sometimes fights break out, whatever. It happens in hockey a lot, right? And in that case, it's always important to talk about it after the fact. Like, hey, like, this is why I felt this way. This is why I overreacted. And like, have a hard conversation of what you can do forward to carry on and to make sure that one, this doesn't happen again. And two, that this person still feels, welcome in the workplace and isn't embarrassed or anything like that. But anyway, thank you so much for that question, Wendy. I really appreciate it. So the next question is, how can resiliency training help to improve relationships in the workplace? I think I sort of already alluded to this is whatever you do in your own personal life to build resiliency, I think has some carryover effect into building resiliency in the workplace. I don't truly believe that resiliency in the workplace is built through the workplace. I think it's built through other areas of your life. So again, like the example I always provide is with athletics, and then like artistic performers is not just the resiliency of how you push your body to its extreme on a daily basis, but the fact of, you're working with people in time and space to win a game or to put on the best performance. And so I think whatever it is, and it doesn't have to be, the arts, and it doesn't have to be athletics, but I think resiliency in the workplace is built through what you do in your own personal life. So.
I have no idea what happened. Everything crashed here, computer, phone, everything.
I just assumed it was me because I'm using my MacBook and, here, but.
Awesome. So I apologize for that. And I hope I didn't miss too much. I'll have to watch it later to catch back up.
No.
I had an interesting question I wanted to ask you, which is, you have a tattoo on your left arm. What is it?
Oh, yeah, you've seen this before. So I have two tattoos. Wait, the neurochemicals or the trust your struggle one? Which one are you?
Go for either one.
Okay, so regarding resiliency, I got this tattoo in Atlanta. This is trust your struggle. So when we had this CrossFit route that we do our 400-meter route in, and it was always at the end of our CrossFit route. So that was the turnaround point. And I just thought it was a great quote of life, of how to be resilient. But my left arm are two neurochemicals. I got dopamine to sort of commemorate my grad school experience, because I did a lot of research in grad school on how drug addiction affects different areas of the brain, and then also the sleep system. And then I got adenosine, which is sort of the backbone of life. And without adenosine, like, basically you're dead, because this is what makes ATP the powerhouse of the cell. And this is actually the neurochemical that caffeine acts on in order to be effective. So I think these two neurochemicals together, adenosine and dopamine, really make up the neurochemical basis of grit. Because without either or of these, and then especially having low levels of expression of either or, like, you can't have grit, in my humble opinion.
I love it. I love it. And it is a perfect combination of your athletic half and your academic half. So I just thought that was really cool, and wanted to call that out, because I hadn't heard you talk about it in any of your other interviews. I wanted to go back to the sleep, and I hope you didn't answer this when I was trying to figure out my failures over here. But being resilient, going off, I had to turn off all internet in the house, so hopefully my phone works just fine. But the plan A and plan B both failed, so we're on plan C. With regards to the sleep studies, I did an interview recently with Stan McChrystal, and he always talks about he eats 1 meal a day and sleeps 4 hours a night. And anyone who's in the military knows that retired General McChrystal is probably one of the most impressive officers who has held all the positions that he's held. I usually say I need at least 6, or I can tell I'm just not firing on all cylinders. I know I would recover better, I would heal faster, I would probably be smarter, sexier, and everything else if I slept 8 hours. But is there truth? You said some people diminish quicker with elongated lack of sleep. I have no really good technical terms for you. So if you get forced to stay awake for a really long time, some people get dumber faster. Is there any truth to Stan only needs to operate on 4 hours of sleep, Lisa only needs to operate on 6 hours of sleep?
Yes, it's called genetics. So that's my area of expertise, is behavioral genetics. So in these studies, what I do is I collect their saliva samples, and then I sequence their DNA to look for unique markers. They're called single nucleotide polymorphisms, or SNPs. So SNPs are naturally occurring mutations in the genetic code that create genetic diversity in humans. And how retired General Stanley McChrystal has gotten to how he is, and it's the reason why I will never ever, and I'm telling you this right now, I will never be a general officer in the U.S. military, because my genetics prevents me from being so. 1, I am a genetic night owl, and 2, I need 7 hours of sleep to function. Now, I can handle other stressors in life very well, but when it comes to, like, we call it chronotype, which is a fancy term for if you're a morning person or an evening person, I am a vampire, and genetically I know that because I've analyzed my DNA to find this SNP. So the retired General McChrystal, you, and then all the presidents of the United States, obviously they haven't been genotyped, but anecdotal evidence shows that most of the US presidents have only slept 4 or 5 hours a night. They pre-select for that. 1, military, morning people, right? Military really pre-selects for morning people. Again, I can hide behind I can ride, I guess, the coattails of the senior leaders of the Army being a scientist, because being a leader in science is different hours than being an actual Army leader. And then 2, like, yeah, they're given so much information in a day, and if their sleep need is only 4 hours, they are very lucky individuals. The actual gene that I guaranteed if I genotype retired General Stanley McChrystal is DEC2, so DEC2. It's the short sleep gene.
Interesting. So is there any way to impact that? And specifically, I've looked at it over the years for athletic reasons, being, hey, I want to recover faster. So I know I can't get any more sleep. I'm a working mom of two. I'm an Army reservist, and I want to work out and compete in the various sports that I enjoy. So since I know I can't create more hours in the day, I try to balance my diet, maybe take vitamins, all those other things. I know there's no easy way, but is there a hard way to get more out of your day?
Yeah, I mean, so the easiest way is, I mean, if I had this option now, I would still do it, is to like plan your day around your chronotype. Like these are all like principles of, we call them biohacking. So again, chronotype is like whether you're a morning person or an evening person. And I feel like you do this, like you want to plan your hardest work, whether it's like your hardest workout or your hardest work mentally, around that time of the day when you know you're going to be most productive. So for me, we as humans, we have these, they're called like bimodal rhythms of alertness, and we have two peaks. One peak is in the morning. Some people it's early morning. For me, it's mid-morning because I'm a vampire. And then we have another peak at night. Some people it's early evening. And for me, like I do my best writing between 10:30 and midnight. Like it's just how I am. And I've tried to change it. You know, I would say when I went through Bullock, like I got so sick right after Bullock because for 3 months, like my body, it was a morning person. But then after, as soon as I got back on my normal schedule, it's like, oh, hell no. Like I need recovery time. Like I can't believe you did that to me for 3 months. So that's one easy biohack. The other way is true. It's true, like nutrition. Like you know, retired General Stanley McChrystal is kind of right. Like there is some credibility now to like intermittent fasting and leveraging brain fuel through fat burning, through like intermittent fasting to help prolong like cognitive functioning.
So it's really interesting. And the reason why I find it interesting on a discussion like this is the people who are listening in are either talent or trying to recruit talent. Yeah. And talent is kind of an ambiguous term because there's so many disciplines out there, but it's somebody who in your career field is not necessarily a jack of all trades, but they're definitely someone that once you get them on the bus and find a right seat for them, they're going to make sure that the bus is going in the right direction. Yeah. And I often find it very interesting when I was working for a Shell oil company and having to lead discussions, every meeting you had to start with an HSSC topic, and it was health, safety, security, environmental. Everybody talked about safety, and they always talked about hold the handrails when you're walking down the stairs and different things like that. And I always started with a health topic because I found that when I'm sleeping right and when I'm eating right, I'm more productive at work. I'm a better team member because I'm more patient. And I always thought that in the workforce, we don't focus on health as much as we should. And I'm not saying eliminate fried foods or fat shame or skinny shame or any of those, but I am saying that it is important to think about, if you're a talented individual or you're recruiting talented individuals, to think about their patterns of life and how those are impacting their ability to work. Especially now with COVID-19 driving a lot of offices to allow virtual work, is there a way to get someone, maybe they're a parent and they have to work off hours. I know my workday now starts at 4 a.m. so that during the school year, when school pickup comes at 3:30 in the afternoon, I can disconnect from my workday and I can be available for my children because I'm working from home anyways. I can't juggle both at the same time. Yeah. So I think that's an interesting topic, and I think it's probably something that we as professionals need to look at. The military is a little less flexible, unfortunately or fortunately. Well, you said your job allows for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's less flexible, but then you also have to have leaders and commanders who like go against the grain, and I'm one of them. Like I created a fatigue management policy yesterday for this company I just took command of because they drive trucks across America, and the risks are huge, right? If they get in an accident, especially if it's fatigue related. So I said I will plan the mission accordingly if they need an extra recovery day, or if like say they have a really stressful work week, whether it's work or family stuff, and they need an extra day to like sleep bank before they go out and drive 3,000 miles across the country, like I will let the mission change accordingly. But
So we actually had a question from someone who is part of our TWG family, and Naira asked about short-term changing your chronotype. And this is something that in the military on deployments, when you're working 24-hour ops or your night shift battle captain, I know that people take medications to help them sleep during the day or something other than coffee to help them stay up at night. The military has a Red Bull relationship that's unhealthy, or what's the new Red Bull? It's not Red Bull anymore.
rain or something like that. Or
Yes,
that's what it is.
yeah. So can you? I realize that those are probably unhealthy options, but if you do need to change your genetics temporarily. Obviously, you talked about how you were good for 3 months, but then when you went back into your regular routine, it was difficult. So is it possible, and is it productive, or are we really fooling ourselves when we drink that coffee at 2 o'clock in the morning and try to drive through the night?
So it's possible through drugs, but otherwise we're fooling ourselves. That's, I mean, honestly, that's a lot of the research that I do. It's all the research I do is unclassified, by the way, but like really we come up with new use cases for existing medications. So what sleep hypnotic are we going to give soldiers, especially if they have to wake up in the middle of the night? Because some of the sleep hypnotics, you wake up, boots on ground, and you're basically legally drunk. What kind of stimulant can we give them that's effective? And it might not be coffee. There's like new ones out there. There's this one called Cognizin. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. Or so Alpha Brain. You might have heard of Alpha Brain. That's another one. The military, yes, they used to give methamphetamines. Obviously, they don't do that anymore.
Thank God.
But that's the only way you can ever fight against your chronotype is unfortunately through drugs. And well, you can use light exposure too. Light can be, like blue light can be alertness promoting, but that only goes so far as well.
And if you force yourself, let's say for the next 2 months, I know that I have a work project that I worked in the Ukraine for a while, but I was working in the US and my team was in the Ukraine. So obviously their time zones are completely different. If I force myself to go to bed at a certain time and force myself to wake up, can I change that? Or is it like you were saying, eventually I'm just going to kind of get sick and it's going to impact me?
So if you stick to your routine, your body will adjust to it. Like if you, so we have, the beauty of these biological clocks in our body and our brain is they are tied to the environment. The light schedules, right? We know that during daylight savings. We know that when we travel. They're also tied to social cues. So if you live in a really dense urban area and you're used to hearing traffic in the morning, like that we call it entrain your clock. As long as you stay on your schedule, you are good. But the second you deviate from that schedule, like I said, what happened at Medical Bullock, like all hell breaks loose. And then you get sick because your body's good at holding on to stress until it realizes it has no reason to be stressed. And then after that, it's the reverse happens.
We actually have another question I really want to jump on here. This is from Wendy Collum. She says, despite our genetics, can we train ourselves to slowly gain the ability to function at high levels on less sleep? So if I could figure out a way to do 5 hours instead of 6 hours, I'm all over it. Tell me I can, Allison.
No, I'm gonna go with the viewpoint of the late Dr. William C. DeVent, who is the father of sleep medicine at Stanford University. He basically discovered REM sleep in the 1950s, and he basically created the field of sleep medicine. And he will always say, or has said, sleepiness will make you stupid. And it's true. Like, you think you're good, and then, this is the reason why accidents happen in the military, is like, as soon as their vigilance drops, it's over. I have to be true to my research and say it's not possible. So,
I hate the fact that you can actually argue with facts, because I've been trying to lie to myself for decades.
Yeah.
So I think this discussion is hugely important for our corporate America listeners. Obviously, there's a benefit to the military. The military has a lot of suck it up buttercup type environments where, hey, I'm tired. Sorry, you have to make it work. I love the fact that you're doing that research and it's actually getting published. I've seen it. I'm currently as a reservist in battalion command. So I have had soldiers come back from training and talk to me about nutrition and sleep studies, which is highly motivating to me because, like I said, the military I came from when I first joined over 20 years ago was suck it up, buttercup, make it happen. I don't care how you do it. And you started chugging your, again, back in the day, Red Bulls, and you made it happen, whether it was 36-hour ops or you were taking those intermittent naps instead of intermittent fasting. So I love hearing this, but I also see a huge benefit in corporate America as people hopefully begin to look at their creative work schedules and the different opportunities we have thanks to COVID. The benefit of COVID is that maybe we can start thinking about how to utilize our employees, especially our talented employees, in a way that leverages all their skills, which includes our vampires working late through the night and maybe doing some of the background research so that when our PMs get up, when our project managers get up in the morning, all of that work is done and the vampires can take their nap. They can go lay down in their coffins. Allison, I'm going to give you a chance to throw out some last words before I go into my adverts for what's going on over the next week with the Talent War Group. But I really want to thank you for all this information, but I also want to plug her one more time. If you don't follow Allison, I don't do it very often, especially with people in uniform and say stalk them, but she is all over the map. She does make me feel lazy. I love the fact that she has to sleep more than me.
Like, I'm you're a man. Told me.
And right before I hand it over to Allison, I have to tell anyone who is still listening that how I met her was literally, I was brought into Fort Knox, right? Yeah, that's where you're at, right? Fort Knox. I was brought into Fort Knox.
Lovely Fort Knox.
to do a video, like some filming for the Army Reserve. And the lady who was interviewing me couldn't stop talking about Allison. So I'm like, well, you flew me all the way in from Texas and all you're doing is talking about this other lady. I met her and 2 minutes later.
I didn't know that. Oh, geez.
Yeah. 2 minutes later, I'm handing Allison, 2 minutes after I actually met Allison. And I don't always have the greatest first impressions. I come off a little brash, a little aggressive. I should be more assertive, a little less aggressive, all those good critiques. Literally 2 minutes after I met Allison, I was handing her my phone and just said, put your number in here because I know I'm going to need to call you at some time. So thank you so much for giving me an hour of your Wednesday, especially right after you took command, which is a huge tasker for the next 2 years.
Yeah.
But yeah, give me your final thoughts.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think my philosophy is iron sharpens iron, and it makes sense that I would be introduced to you because you are like at the tip of the spear. And like again, my like ride or die at Walter Reed, Georgina, you went through Ranger school with her, so
yeah.
you know, it's like, it just goes to show like those people who are at the tip of the spear, eventually you'll meet at like through some path, you know?
Yes, yes. So if you don't already follow Allison, you must. Next week, the Talent War Group on this podcast will be a LinkedIn Live session number 40. I'm going to hold up my notes here since I'm on an alternate device. It's a little less smooth, but next week it'll be the what and how of resiliency with Dan Luna and Chris Free. We also have 2 podcasts coming out this week. The first one being the Jedburgh podcast. I advertise them every week. It's Fran Rachapi talks about, well, let me say, he talks with a bunch of professional people. Here it's Rhyme Antics. He's talking with the CEO, Chantel Calloway, and he pulls out a lot of really interesting information. So that's the Jedburgh podcast. That's coming out tomorrow. And then the Talent War podcast is coming out with George Randall and Tom Lokar. And they're going to be discussing what choosing the right talent can do for your organization. So right smack dab in the center of what the Talent War Group is all about. And don't forget, George did literally write the book, The Talent War, so he probably knows what he's talking about. Again, Allison, thanks so much for joining. Anyone who's online, please continue to ask your questions and we will try to get back to you, which means, Allison, after this, you're not off the hook. Thank you.
Fine, yeah. Thank you so much. It's so good to like see your face instead of just texting you.
It's perfect.